行くぞ!
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about the new maps that everyone has been wanting me to cover, being the London and Westminster maps of Guts and Blackpowder. So let's get into it.
The past is gone. Let it die.
For the first map, we have it taking place in the London Burrow, which is in, well, London. We spawn in the upper balconies of the St. Paul's Cathedral overlooking the city. The text appears, "The city is doomed, you must escape." When overlooking the city, we can see that many bridges and connections directly to London have long been destroyed, with our exit now being to attempt to go to Westminster and find the King's Horse Guards. Making our way through the rooftop of St. Paul's Cathedral, we see that it's burning and in a collapsing state. Once we go through the rest of St. Paul's Cathedral, we fight off a horde of undead zombie soldiers that seem to have resided in St. Paul's Cathedral. We actually get outside and we're able to find an abandoned makeshift hospital that the soldiers were using during their occupation and defense of the St. Paul's Cathedral. Going a bit beyond that and out into the street, find out that we're in one of the many defensive perimeters set by the military to contain the horde. However, we now wish to enter the Ludgate block on our way to go to Westminster. The task to open it is pretty simple. We just have to move the bodies blocking the door. Going forward, past the gate, we enter the Mills & Co. bookstore, where we have to stack boxes to go up. We go through the skylight and enter an abandoned building, which has a note addressing Bubbles, and also an American flag. Yeah, this place is Bubbles' old home, but he's not here, having moved back to America, which is actually seen in the shop and in one of his dialogue options. It's a cool reference to him, and I'm glad that we got something tying him to the world. But anyway, once we leave the building, we are stopped by a Scottish man who is in the British Army. He tells us that there are some riflemen up ahead, firing on anyone who goes forward, likely firing on any deserters from the previous defensive blocks that we have gone through. He goes out calling out to Jimmy, who notably has already been long dead. He runs up in an attempt to try and get Jimmy, but is shot as he attempts to get there. We are tasked to get to the steeple, with the riflemen admittedly being pretty difficult to dodge if you're out in the open. And in some footage I got, you can actually see some of the guys I was with getting eliminated because of them. Once you're closer to the steeple where they are, you're tasked with moving the wagon nearby to provide cover, and have to lock the gates to the steeple and alert a horde. This will have them overrun, and you can hear them struggle with it, with them eventually passing on, as no more shots ring afterwards. It's also here where we see what happens to people who have deserted, as there is a British soldier, which I believe has also been noted to be an officer, that hangs dead from one of the pikes near the entrance, with a sign that reads, "I betrayed my king and country for my pathetic life." Once we eliminate the riflemen, we have to continue walking through the streets, eventually making our way to the Britannia Herald, which I believe has been a source for a lot of the information we find in newspapers in previous campaign maps. However, here, they've been overrun, sadly, with many shamblers and undead roaming the Herald, blocking the way forward. Once we clear them out, we make our way to an abandoned courthouse, which is burning and partially destroyed. It's so big and void of life that honestly it does cement the feeling of how doomed and empty the city is. Making our way through the hole in the wall that just happens to be there, we make our way through some destroyed buildings, wherein we finally reach the Greenway Beaten Inn. This is a place that has been mentioned in papers around the map, which one of the bigger parts was that it was mentioned that there was going to be a fight taking place on September 21st. Sadly, there is no fight, but there is an undead wrestler, still waiting for an opponent that will never show up. Through another hole in the wall, we make it into a toy shop, wherein we must find a key in all the cabinets to progress. Once we find it, we open the gate and progress to the sewers and onto the vat house. Outside, we see dead soldiers who are references to Guts and Blackpowder YouTubers, and a board reading "Plunderers to be shot." Inside, a lone engineer explains his unit was ordered by the king to burn the city to stop the infection, but the noise drew a horde, wiping them out. He begs us to save what what's left of Westminster, and tasks us with destroying the vats and, in essence, burning the city down, finishing what his unit had started. We destroy the vats, flooding the building, with the liquid bursting through the doors, washing us away as the screen fades to black. Once that happens, we unlock the next segment of the campaign, being Westminster.
The world is a wasteland of failures past, and yet you must ride out into it, unafraid.
We pick up immediately where we left off, with us being in front of the vat house, now burning and completely destroyed. We have to continue our walk through the city, as we still have yet to make it to the King's Horse Guards. We make our way through small shops and into St. Gilles Street, wherein we find a barricade we have to destroy it in order to progress. Walking through the alleyways and into a courtyard of a blacksmithing shop, we reach the rooftops and need to use a crane to hook a latch onto a wooden platform on the bottom in an abandoned street to progress. Crossing the platform, we make it to a building with a rotunda, and in there we see a hallway that seems to have been where people were hiding from the blight. However, all have since passed and become infected. Through this little hallway, we're able to make our way through several other buildings in order to get to the British Museum, which in there we pass through several exhibitions. And then what seems to be a French soldier exhibition. We're in a zombie clad in metal plating and wielding a halberd attacks, carrying the key we need to progress. Outside, a wooden gate is manned by a bell-ringing operator above, who promises to open it after sending out a warning. While we wait, waves of undead attack. Once through, we witness a regiment being slaughtered, with a soldier up ahead retreating into the horse guards' forecourt. The undead swarm the area, forcing us to move a carriage and climb a ladder into an open office window. Inside the office that we walk through, we find Arthur Wellesley, the first Duke of Wellington himself. He was a famed British officer, and in our world, he led the 33rd Regiment of Foot. He was also a statesman, and was one of the more instrumental figures in defeating Napoleon at Waterloo. Here, though, he's a dead man walking, reading a newspaper with a nearby letter addressed to Bubbles. Wellesley tells us our only escape is through Westminster Bridge, but we must reach it by midnight before it's destroyed. He gives us his pocket watch to track the time and insists he's staying behind, saying that they didn't forgive him for Belgium and won't forgive him for London. He tasks us with taking the King's colours, a flag, and what's left of the royal wagon train to safety. As we leave, he watches from his window. There is some additional dialogue for him if you choose to stay with him, wherein he monologues that the nation's commanders have zero idea what they're doing, as the reorganization efforts seem aimless, and criticizes the people at the top, saying that they'll be rewarded and protected in their estates rather than fight, or like him, will be forced to take the blame and die. Of which the undead do end up actually breaking into the room wherein he presumably dies fighting. The caravan sets out smoothly until a wheel breaks, forcing us to repair it. Nearby, we find an abandoned wagon, evidence others tried and failed to escape. But we salvage an intact wheel to continue from that wagon. From our little accident, we have to lift up the wheel and get it all fixed, and the wagon continues until we reach a point where we have to move a carriage out of the way so that the horses can continue. From there, at the gate near the bridge, 2 cannons stand nearby ready to blast it open. Once we fire them, a frantic run begins, sprinting across the bridge under a strict timer while fending off hordes of undead. If we're fast enough and the bridge hasn't been blown yet, soldiers atop the walls of the makeshift barracks actually open fire to cover us. Those inside cheer as we make it through, survivors of the fall of London, living to fight another day.